Welcome to the Aboriginal channel. On this episode, we're going to be locating some more of our ancestors who've been put in mass graves. In order to do that, we must know what a potter's field is. Potter's field is a burial place for paupers and strangers. It says a potter's field, pauper's grave, or common grave is a place for the burial of unknown, unclaimed, or indigent people. It says Potter's Field is of biblical origin. That takes us over here to Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta, Georgia. It was founded as Atlanta Cemetery in 1850 on 6 acres of land southeast of the city. Pause. So originally in 1850 it had only 6 acres of land, and then it was renamed in 1872 after the Civil War to reflect the large number of oak and magnolia trees growing in the area. It goes on to say the original 6 acres of Oakland remains one of the oldest historical plots of land in Atlanta, most of the rest of the city having been burned in 1864. So if we look on this list of contents over here, we're going to look at 3 of these areas: the Confederate section, Potter's Field, and the Black section. So starting with Confederate section, it says the Confederate section of Oakland is home to an estimated 6,900 burials, of which about 3,000 are unknown. Pause. I presume that the whole 6,900 were of a copper stock, and that's because they didn't usually mix in Confederate soldiers with other unknown bodies. Confederate soldiers got as much as respect as Union soldiers did when it comes to their burials, as you look down in the Natchez National Cemetery in Mississippi. And then on the other hand, they said that most of the city was burned in 1864, and we know that there was only the copper stocks and Europeans in that area. And right here on the Civil War's battles map, you see a long chain of battles right here. And as you look right here, it goes Carroll, Douglas, and then Fulton. This big one right here is out of shape looking county right here. That's where Atlanta is. So Carroll, Douglas, Fulton, Carroll, Douglas, Fulton. See, battles. Another reason why, to me, all 6,900 were Aboriginals is because Fulton County was created in 1853. The county seat is Atlanta, where the Oakland Cemetery is at. That was founded in 1850. So they founded the cemetery before the county was even created. Going back to what its Wikipedia says about Potter's Field at the Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta. And it says that it's 7.5 acres area that is traditionally designated for burial of those without the means to purchase a plot of land. But we know what Potter's Field is. A Potter's Field is a place for the burial of unknown, unclaimed, or indigent people, which the indigent people reflects who they said was buried at the Potter's Field at the Oakland Cemetery. But the burial of unknown and unclaimed let you know that there's more to it than just people that don't have money and need somewhere to bury their folks. It says Potter's Field makes a significant contribution to the number of residents at Oakland, as indicated by a 1978 archaeological survey conducted by Georgia State University that revealed the entire area to be occupied by an estimated 17,000 persons. So that's 17,000, presumably a copper stock. So that's 17,000 plus 6,900. For the Black section, it says this section of the cemetery is a testament to the period of history during which segregation was at its height in the United States. Pause. So right there, it'll let you know that the Confederate whites didn't get put in a hole with the copper stock because of this segregation was at its highest. It says that one striking feature that visitors will notice is that the Black section, similarly to the adjoining Potter's Field, lacks a great deal of headstones, monuments, and grave markers in general. Down low in another section, it says before the bell tower was constructed in 1899, a farmhouse owned by James Williams, who would later become mayor of Atlanta, stood in the spot. From this location, General John B. Hood directed Confederate forces in the Battle of Atlanta on July 22nd, 1864. So there they have right there. The bell tower is basically a monument for a General Hood who was a director of Confederate troops in the Battle of Atlanta. So that's a monument for a Confederate general right there in Atlanta. Here on a map of the cemetery, it's located right here, this big green patch right here. And you don't see any water around it like usual mound villages would have a water source right by it. So whenever you see mounds without a water source, those are usually burial mounds because they're set off from the community. And anytime I'm talking about a cemetery from this point forward, just go ahead and already automatically assume that I'm talking about a cemetery that was placed on an old burial mound site, which we're going to learn right here when I go into a street view and show you how this area is elevated from the regular ground around it. Go up here, go to street side, put this dude right here. Now here's a street view. This is it. This is the cemetery right here. Now I'm going to zoom in right here to show you how much this area of the land is elevated. Now you see how the sidewalk and the ground is right here, and way up here is dirt and burials. See how it's higher right here and then higher over here like it was a complex. Now if you look down the street, you see how this elevation swoops and then it goes down, and then further down the street it goes back up. That's part of a mound too. These are not natural hills or part of mountains that were inside of the city. These are mounds from probably thousands of years ago, and they were very huge. But this is a whole mound complex as you can look down the street. I wanted to say that to any of the aboriginals with ancestry in the state of Georgia, this place right here in the city of Atlanta, this Oakland Cemetery, is definitely with importance. Now I'm going to move over here to what is called the Eastern Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky, where in a previous video I showed that during the so-called Civil War, they went around destroying the records. And many instances after those years, say right down here it says in 1920, destroyed most of the records, or in 1895. So they were doing it all the time, and it wasn't only to conceal or to put paper genocide down on blacks being Indians or transforming Indians into blacks, colored, or Negroes. It was not only for that, it was also something like this right here where it says a fire on 16th of May of 1882 destroyed most county court records. Deeds, however, were later reconstructed from originals held by the owners. So that meant that they were still in the land too by way of destroyed records. But there was many instances where during the Civil War years, right here, 1864, destroyed most of the records. Or right here in Powell County, a disaster in 1864 destroyed most records. Or here in Ohio County, a disaster in 1864 destroyed most records. And as you can see right here in Montgomery, Morgan, and Muhlenberg counties, they all had disasters in 1863 and 1862 that destroyed most records. So you get the point on that right there. Moving back over to the Eastern Cemetery in Louisville, it says it is a 28-acre cemetery located in Louisville, Kentucky, a budding Cave Hill Cemetery. It contains about 16,000 graves, though documentation for about 138,000 bodies. This imbalance is due to the cemetery formerly being a site for mass paupers' graves and from the reuse of grave sites. Remember what the paupers meant: unwanted, unclaimed, strangers, and indigent. It says it was originally known as the Methodist. The grounds were purchased by two Methodist Episcopal churches and used for burials by 1844. So it says that they started burying people there in 1844. It says Louisville Crematories and Cemetery Corporation owned the cemetery by the late 1980s. So down here it says mismanagement. In 1989, a whistleblower working for Louisville Crematories and Cemetery Company made the public aware that graves purchased by families had been reused. Bodies were buried atop other bodies. Graves were carelessly excavated for reuse, and medical cadaver body parts from the University of Louisville were buried in mass rather than intact, as is legally required for donated bodies. Human bones were found in inappropriate areas, including in a toolbox, a glove compartment, a fast food bag, and shallow graves. Some of the behavior had been practiced since the 1920s, and records indicate reuse began in 1858. Officials resigned and were charged with 60 counts of charges that included reuse use of graves and abuse of corpses, but there were no legal consequences. The behavior is the subject of the 2017 documentary Facing East, referring to Eastern as the most overburied cemetery in America. From here, we're going to go over and look at the cemetery. So this is the Cave Hill Cemetery right here. It says Cherokee Triangle right there, and it has some water sources in it. So I have placed myself right here on Lexington Road on a road view of the cemetery, and I'm going to go there right now. Now, this is from Lexington Road. And back here, you can see the water. And then the land, you see how it's low right here. Then it's going up. So I'll show you from the street right now. So if you look right here at the street, the road right here, then look behind this wall, this brick wall, at the land. You see how the land goes up? This is a mound. Now I brought it up a little closer so you can see the ground down here, and then behind the wall how the land is way up here. On a side note, we must reflect on this Civil War's battles map at Kentucky right here. And Louisville is right up here where this blue dot is at. But there were major battles in Kentucky as well. Once again, we see the water in the background, the land down here. Then you can see it slanted. If you look, it slants going up. But then you look down at the regular ground and it's flat. Gets up even higher back up in here. Now you see the way they got these trees lined up on the inside of the wall. That's on purpose. They did that a long time ago. Planted those trees there before that wall was put there to keep what was behind it, the mounds, or the irregular rise in ground surface or surface ground, hidden. Through the history books, which has all been a lie. So therefore, if it's a lie, then what's the truth? If it's a lie, then what's